4 Asian American groups from Washington, D.C., Chicago, Los Angeles, and San Francisco have worked together for a number of years on human and civil rights. But they have now officially banded together to create a new organization called the Asian American Center for Advancing Justice. Now, joining me now is T.T. Liu. She is the executive director of San Francisco's Asian Law Caucus, and she's also a member of the newly formed AACAJ. I was thinking, okay, I have to memorize new letters now. But thank you for joining us. Now, first of all, Asian Law Caucus, so many of us know about it. It is the oldest Asian civil rights organization?
That's right. It's the oldest organization in the country that's dedicated to advancing the legal and human rights of Asians and Pacific Islanders. We were founded in 1972. And if you think about that, that's pretty incredible because it was only 7 years after there was an Immigration Act passed, the 1965 Immigration Nationality Act, that really opened the doors to immigration from Asia. Before that, there were very racially discriminatory quotas that kept Asian immigration to very token levels.
It's hard to think back that that's been 40 years ago that started.
That's
now, you along with these other organizations across the country have worked together before, but now you've kind of gone into this one heading. Why is that?
Well, we've worked together for almost 20 years now, and we originally started working together because we saw a need to have a presence in D.C. We already had organizations in California, in Northern and Southern California, that were representing the community and advocating for the community. And a lot of the work was direct legal services and litigation to really defend the legal rights of our community. And what we saw was that we needed a presence in D.C. But over the years, what we've seen is that that's not enough to have a strong presence in California, to grow a presence in Chicago, and to have an established organization that represents all of us in D.C. Because we're now seeing the community really grow in states like Nevada, Washington, Arizona, Georgia, and we're not able to meet the needs of these new communities that are emerging. And you know, at this point, most of the Asian community are recent immigrants, over 60% of us.
How difficult is it to pull everybody together because the Asian community is so very, very diverse?
That's right. It is very diverse, and one of the things that's incredible is that the Asian Law Caucus, when we were founded in 1972, the mission was already an explicitly pan-Asian approach. So really looking at what we have in common as a community here in the U.S., even though we are very culturally, linguistically diverse, even though we come from many different backgrounds. But the idea was that, you know, here in the U.S., we really need to support each other because we do have a lot of common interests and a lot of common issues at stake.
You know, one critique, if you will, from me, is that when you have an organization like the NAACP, everybody knows who they are.
Right.
But Asians, the Asian community, traditionally kind of is under the radar.
That's right.
And people don't necessarily know who you are.
Right.
If you have an Asian Law Caucus in the Bay Area, those are people who are active know about it. But, you know, across the country, you may not be known.
That's right.
Is the newly formed group going to kind of raise up this visibility?
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly the point. The point is that, you know, here we have very deep roots in the community through the Asian Law Caucus. We have very deep roots in LA and Chicago through the Asian Pacific American Legal Center and the Asian American Institute. But in other parts of the country, we have growing Asian communities, and people don't know where to turn for credible information.
I agree.
To plug in when there are compelling policy issues. For example, comprehensive immigration reform has been debated. And there's been a lot of work trying to move the needle on that. We are going to be getting policy recommendations coming out of the Senate and the White House on, you know, how we should reform the immigration system in a way that works for American families, for American businesses, for individuals.
I know all of you who are working in this arena work very, very hard, and I personally think it's time to kind of raise that level so people are just a little bit more aware.
Right.
We have a diverse community. We have so many different diverse issues that are different, especially when we're talking about a foreign language and you know, immigration and diverse cultures. But there's no central location, as you said. So it really would be a big, important step.
That's right. Yeah. So part of it is for individual community members to know where to turn. The other part of it is to have a national profile. So there's a national spokesperson for the media, for policymakers
Absolutely.
to know there's a place where they can turn for information to understand where the Asian community is and what impacts different policies might have on our community in
Do
particular.
you see Washington, D.C. becoming more diverse and therefore more inclusive?
I think that, is really an important goal of why we're all coming together. So many other national organizations are headquartered in DC or maybe in New York on the East Coast. One thing we've been very conscious about is we're coming together as peer organizations. And so the center of gravity is not in DC. The center of gravity is where the people are, actually, which is really where the affiliates are, particularly here in California. And so the goal is really to ensure that in DC, we have a voice that reflects all of our diversity and insists that DC policymakers are responsive to our needs.
Well, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Chicago, I mean, those are not small cities, so you should be able to garner some attention. Unfortunately, we run out of time, but I'm glad that you came to kind of let us know about this, and we'll keep an eye on the newly formed AACAJ. All right, thank you very much for being here. Okay, what we're going to do is take a short break, but still ahead, what is the excitement about a 15-foot blooming plant that smells like rotting flesh? We'll find out about the corpse plant. Stay with us. Well, the blooming of the 15-foot Titan arum is, along with the rotting smell that comes with it, is something that many people look forward to. And it just happened this past Wednesday. We're referring to the corpse plant. And the bloom has come and gone just about, but it's still not too late for you to visit the UC Botanical Garden in Berkeley for a last-minute peek at the plant. Now, with me is now the director of the Botanical Garden, Paul Licht, and it is a big deal when one of these huge plants blooms, right?
It's a big deal in this country. There are only maybe 5 or 6 every year. For many decades, there were none. So we're just learning how to do it. It's a big deal because it's an incredible sight and smell.
Now, this plant comes from?
Comes from Sumatra.
Sumatra.
The edges of the jungle in Sumatra. And we display it in a tropical house that'll make you feel like you're sweating in the jungles of Sumatra.
And how many plants do you have at the garden?
We have, right now, about 15 adults plus a bunch of babies that we made from one of the adults.
And so every so many years, one of the adults actually blooms?
Well, starting in 2005, we've had 7 blooms since there. 6 plants, one of them bloomed twice. And they started blooming when they were 10 years old, then 12, then 13, then 14, then 15. They're all from seed planted in 1995 that was collected in Sumatra.
So it took that many years for it to actually develop and mature?
Yes, the plant that just bloomed has been waiting for 15 years to bloom.
Wow. Let's take a look at some photographs that we have. Now, just for people to understand what it looks like now, we're looking at this big green thing right now.
There's a big green thing that looks like a tree. In fact, it's one large leaf. So for 15 years, what this plant has been doing is making a large leaf.
And this is
on Wednesday, that leaf opened up into the most spectacular bloom. Doesn't have a leaf when it's having a bloom. You can look down in it. That's where the smell is coming from.
It's beautiful, and this is 15 feet tall now.
No, the leaf was 15 feet tall.
Okay.
This flower is only 4 feet tall. Our biggest one was 6 feet tall. And in Germany, a couple of years ago, they had one that said was 9 feet tall.
Well, that's still pretty tall.
They all smell.
Now, this is the leaf looking at it from the side.
This is a 6 foot tall one.
Okay.
This woman is 6 foot tall on a ladder, and she's pollinating it in hopes that we'll get seed and fruit. What she's doing is putting pollen down on those little orange flowers at the bottom. The white things above them are the male flowers, but they haven't made their own pollen yet.
So they don't necessarily self-pollinate?
They can't self-pollinate. But we were lucky. We had pollen from our first plant, our second one, and look what it produced. This 4-foot-tall head of dozens and dozens of orange fruits. Each one of these fruits, you see it there, about 4 feet, produced 1 or 2 seeds. The seeds look like giant olive pits.
Now, the thing is, when you're saying that it produces these fruit, the fruit is not to be eaten.
Not by us.
Not by us.
We think large birds like hornbills distribute them, carry them around the jungle. It's amazing how little we know about these. We really don't know what's going on in Sumatra.
And this flower, you had a contest, and it's called Malodora?
Malodora, which we interpreted, I chose the winning name because it sounded to me like an adorable malodor. It's an adorable, foul-smelling plant.
And it really does smell like rotting flesh?
It really does.
Oh, my gosh.
A very large rotting flesh.
And right here next to us...
More like an elephant than a rat.
Okay. And right here, this is what?
This
a baby
is a
plant?
baby from one of those seeds. This was planted 2 years ago. And it turns out
Look how
they
big this-
make great house plants. So
Oh.
we've been selling them for about a year now, and people are having more fun. If you feed them a lot and grow, they may reach your ceiling, and if you're really lucky or unlucky, it may bloom, and then you go out and spend the night in a nice hotel, and then come back the next
But
day.
if I raise something like this at home, it could take up to a dozen years
If you take
to bloom.
good care, it could take 6 years, or it could take 15, or it could take 20.
We just don't know.
We don't know.
Now, very quickly before we run out of time, you brought a couple of plants that represent
I
some
think
plants
it's important to
of the
know
garden.
that this is not a unique plant. It has a lot of relatives.
Okay.
This is, it's called an Amorphophallus titanum, the Titanic. Here's a smaller variety of Amorphophallus. Okay, that's about as big as it gets. There are 4 of them in there.
Okay.
Each one makes a leaf. This is a cobra lily from China, related to the American jack-in-the-pulpit.
And you can see it just kind of curves
Similar,
this way.
that's right. Instead of a big skirt, it made a little hood. Here's the middle, the same thing you saw there.
Okay.
This is
This plant?
a common plant that people know from florists. Well, they're more familiar with the pink one on closer to you.
Now
It's an
we have-
anthurium.
Right, these two.
And then next to it is a more rare black anthurium, but you notice a colorful skirt and this central stalk with flowers. These little bumps on it are the flowers that you saw down in the bottom of that
and
plant.
now this
And
is a
then
big one here. This is
the most common plant in Bay Area gardens that everybody has is a calla lily. And this happens to be a large variety called Hercules.
and this can get how big?
Well, the flower can get a foot long, and the leaves can be 3 foot, and it gets
Wow.
to be about 5-6 feet tall.
This is beautiful.
But look at the inside. It's got the
Same stem.
stem in the middle. It's called the
Exactly.
spadix.
So what we want to do is encourage everybody to go to the garden because, one, they might still be able to see
There'll
the
still
flower.
be something spectacular to see.
Will it still
and-
smell?
No, won't smell. They're
Okay, so this
lucky.
is the time to go. But you can go ahead and find out more information. We'll be having that up on screen in just a second. What we're going to do is take a short break. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Well, thank you very much for joining us today. For information on today's guest, visit us at KTVU.com/community for the Bay Area People page. And don't forget to join us on Facebook for the behind-the-scenes look at the show. And that is all the time we have for today, so thank you very much for joining us. Have a safe and fun weekend. We'll see you again right here on Bay Area People next week. Until then, I'm Rosie Chu. Have a good week. Bye-bye.